Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Building Your Professional Presence at Bentley. So excited to have you here. My name's Diana Sunder. I'm one of the Assistant Directors of Graduate Admission here. We're really thrilled to welcome you to this presentation. We're going to be talking a little bit about how Bentley's support for our graduate students here is really going to help you think completely differently about how you can accelerate and transform your career with the many educational and resource opportunities that you have. So thank you, everyone. We'll get started. I'm very excited to introduce our speaker for today, the Vice President of Strategy and Innovation. I'm joined today by Sean Ferguson. So thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Diana. Really excited to be here today. Welcome, everyone. Really excited to have the opportunity to share with you. My name is Sean Ferguson. I'm Vice President of Strategy and Innovation. And typically, folks are like, so what is strategy and innovation? And we are responsible for driving growth and transformation at Bentley University. And the graduate programs sit at the center of our drive for growth and transformation as we seek to better align with the market and really deliver transformational outcomes for students who come to the program. Um, for the last 20 years, I've been working leading graduate and executive education programs across the United States and Asia. I was the assistant dean of degree programs at Rice University, launched a lot of their new graduate programs there. After about 8 years, I moved to the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. They're also known as HKUST, and there, we were top 15 ranked Financial Times MBA program, delivering programs to serve and drive the growth that Asia was seeing. And then after that, had an opportunity to move to this MIT Sloan startup that was a partnership with the Central Bank of Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur, called the Asia School of Business. And so I've had the opportunity to see things related to careers in a global perspective from all over the world. In addition to working at really great esteemed institutions like Bentley, Rice, HKUST, and the Asia School of Business, I've also served on multiple boards and in capacities of relevance for graduate business students. So I was the first elected board member for the MBA Career Services and Employer Alliance for Asia Pacific. So really helped us really break into that part of the world as an organization. I was on the board of the Graduate Management Admissions Council. I've also served on the board of SEMS, which is the Community of European Management Schools. And then I was also an accreditation mentor for AACSB, which is the global accreditation leader. And so with that and those experiences, I don't have just the perspective of when I worked at Rice, HKUST, and ASB, but I also have the perspective representing broad constituencies across the globe. And that perspective has really helped inform how the schools that I've been at and what we do here at Bentley, how we should deliver in order to ensure school success, but then also serving our employer partners well. My research and expertise focuses on global employability and career success, and I've helped place students across the world. And I think, even though we're an American business school here in Boston, I think there's strategies and opportunities that we want our students to expose to beyond the U.S. So while the U.S. is an incomparable labor market, there's also a range of opportunities across the world. And the more opportunities that our students have, the higher the return on investment that they will have after they complete the program. And so for us at Bentley, what we really believe is that great graduate business programs transform careers. And while there's a lot of learning and knowledge that comes out the educational experience, for most graduate programs, unlike when we were going to undergrad and our parents were very involved in the process, for graduate programs, this is really when adults get to take on the ownership and the decision-making process of what's next for them for their kind of professional career. And for us, that means ROI is a top priority. And so placement is a focus for us. Our goal is to have 90% placement and to position students for success at top employers and top jobs across all of our respective programs. Strong salaries are critical for ROI. So when we think about where we want to be as an institution, and I'll use MBA as a frame of reference because we have a range of different graduate programs and different graduate programs, you know, there's not always a top 100 or a top 50, but when we think about where we want to be, is we want to be the equivalent of a top 100 global MBA program when it comes to salary outcomes, and top 50 3 years out after graduation. And that, that progression from being top 100 to top 50 shows that, in the period from when you graduate to when you get 3 years later, you improve from a relative perspective compared to other schools. And so this is something we take great pride in. And it shows it's not, the Bentley value add isn't just based on our brand, but it's based on the productivity that our students are able to demonstrate to industry. That is really kind of, dictating the value that we offer. The other thing that we think about is what we're trying to do is really position you not just for success at graduation, but that promotability after graduation. One of our KPIs is that we want 50% of our graduates to get promoted within 3 years of graduation. So the way we do that is cutting edge and market aligned programs that are designed for today's business professionals. Bentley, we're not a science and technology school like an MIT or a Caltech, that's focused on what's going on under the hood in technology. What we're really focused on is the application of technology for business transformation. And so we have STEM enabled tracks through all of our graduate business programs. And these STEM paths really help with increasing the ROI potential, particularly for our international students. Now, because the dynamics in hiring in the United States have been very fluid, one of the things that we're trying to do to preserve our value proposition is not just exclusively think about how we're going to place students in the United States, but is there optionality that we can create when it comes to providing global options to our students? The rise of nationalism in a multipolar world makes global skills even more critical. And so we're actively trying to prepare students for that. And then, at our school, we're a small environment, so career coaching and the ability to engage with our career office can really help you figure out these various inflection points that you may have at different points in time in your career. And so this philosophy is really what's grounding our approach to careers and employment. Now, one of the things that we feel is really great about Bentley is that the hiring environment is really favorable here in Boston. And so I created this graph based on the experiences that I've had over the last 20 years. The first column is focused on Boston, where we're at now, from the Bentley perspective. Also, I place students all across the United States. And so there's that middle column, and then there's the global landscape, right? And so, one of the things I try to do when I present is make sure I provide a more comprehensive perspective on what's going on when it pertains to careers than the popular press, right? And so I've been in this business for 20 years, and for 20 straight years, the MBA is supposed to be dying or not relevant. Is higher education even relevant? And these things are, I can resoundingly say these things are absolutely not true. But, when the media and the press, typically they report in broad brushes, right? But sometimes you have to understand a little bit of the nuance of what's going on in the marketplace to understand how you should position yourself for success. And so the thing I think that stands out about Boston is it's one of the most highly diversified economies in the United States and the world, right? So when I was in Hong Kong, Hong Kong is a financial hub. So everything was about finance. When I was at Rice University, we were an energy school. So 70% of our students went to go work in energy. And Boston is one of these unique unicorns because it's highly diversified across a range of spaces. Strong financial services industry. I was talking to one of our faculty yesterday, and like half of the top 10 hedge funds in the world or something like that are based here in Boston. Technology industry, with all the research universities and the innovation ecosystem here, technology is a big thing. And so that's an area for us. And then Boston is a health and life sciences innovation hub, a leading hub in the world. And so it provides a very diversified platform for people to come and work at. The other thing is, like, Boston's the only city in the US on the East Coast or in the Midwest with a compound annual growth rate of their gross metropolitan product of 6% a year or more. And so gross metropolitan product is a metropolitan oriented version of gross domestic product. Um, the quality of the workforce and the diversity of the economy and the economic productivity of the economy has led to a gross metropolitan per capita that's the highest on the East Coast and the fifth highest nationally. And then another thing is Boston, because of the life sciences space, because of the technology space, Boston is number three in the US when it comes to venture investment. And so a lot of times when people think about, going to business school, getting an MBA or a specialized master's, they're always thinking about, hey, I'm going to work at a big company. But a lot of times, the big companies are the ones that change the most, right? Early stage ventures are um, sometimes more inclined to hire international students. So we want to encourage folks to have a broad view of what's in their consideration set. So when we think about Bentley, they're well aligned with all the regional growth trends here. So, the labor growth rates for business statistics careers based on your Bureau of Labor Statistics information, 19.4%. Human, so we have a world-class master's in business analytics. Human and computer interaction, 16.5% growth rate. Information technology, marketing research, financial analytics, all these areas, you know, bode well for programs that we have in our portfolio here at Bentley. And so Boston, super bullish on this as an environment, far from an employability standpoint. Now, when we think about the U.S., it's a little bit, different, right? And I'm going to talk about the U.S. and the global landscape. And so the U.S. Has been built around graduate business hiring. It's a mass market MBA and MS hiring environment. It's an established product and a value proposition, right? And this is different than what I experienced abroad on the global sense, right? There's still debate about, do you need an MBA? Is a graduate degree needed? And that kind of thing, right? And so sometimes, and so much of the hiring environment for early career people is built around the undergrad. And so there's not this consideration of the value of a master's in the global context. The U.S. hiring environment is much more structured, and they use internships as an evaluation mechanism for full-time hiring and as a pathway to a full-time role. Whereas if you look in the global landscape, internships are not a predictor of full-time roles. So, for the schools that I worked at in the U.S., maybe 50% of jobs, full-time jobs, come from internships, where in Asia, maybe only 10% of jobs, full-time jobs, come from internships. Um, well, I know there's a lot of drama around and concern about work authorization here in the U.S. I'd still think it's a case by case kind of situation where employers are comfortable with working a work authorization. I think the STEM designations that give 3 years of OPT allow employers an avenue to kind of test talent and get comfortable with them before they make the investment in them. And so I think that also bodes well. And the salary environment is a little bit more structured and systematic in the US than it is in other parts of the world. So the salary bands tend to be more narrow and consistent and high compared to the rest of the world. When you think about the global landscape, I talked about how there's not a consensus about MS and MBA degrees in the global landscape. This is what I experienced when I was in Asia. The most important thing is work experience matters. But why this is a problem is the work experience matters mindset in the global context. Hirers abroad assume that, well, if you were an analyst, then I want to hire you for an analyst position. And like, why would someone leave an analyst position to go do an analyst position? And that's one of the differences in the US labor market. There's a lot more hiring up here than there is in the rest of the world. There's a very risk averse environment when it comes to staffing. And this is why, well, when I moved to Asia, I was like, oh, that's the future, all the economic growth. But the way that they think about talent really doesn't capture top talent's aspiration and then the goals that they're shooting for. Um, work authorization can be fragmented. Sometimes it's easy Sometimes it's not. And then sometimes people are, um, when they are looking at work authorization to a much greater degree in the US, they're doing it as a salary strategy as opposed to a talent diversification strategy, right? Um, the other thing that goes on in the global landscape is there's no structured hiring for graduate students, right? Everything is just in time there. And so what we would tell our students abroad is that, hey, in the US, if you get your internship and you go through the hiring cycle, maybe you can have your job in like December or something like that, and you can start in May. That kind of thing never happens, in Asia. You kind of you got to thread the needle and hire, you know, the hiring process kind of starts 12 weeks before they're ready for the person to start. And so it makes it a little bit more challenging to manage that dynamic. And so it's this kind of structure that I think makes the US more favorable, even though there's some risk on the immigration side. And you're not totally immune to the immigration risk on the other side. And the salary upside of the US is so distinct and incomparable that I think we fundamentally believe that it's worth the investment to try and gain access to this labor market. Now, what we're hearing from employers now is that they're cautious, particularly in tech. And when I say tech, I mean big tech, consulting, and manufacturing. These areas have been losing their footing. I think the tariffs have played a role on what's going on in the manufacturing space. Consulting is always a business that is a function of the economic health. And what happens a lot of times in consulting is that in an up economy, the projects are more growth and transformation oriented. In a down economy, it's more about how do you extract, cut costs and find efficiencies, right? And then big tech, I think they had just grown so much over the prior 10 years. And with the advent of AI, they're kind of retrenching to figure out what their real staffing model is going to be. Now, I talked earlier, the STEM paths that we have in all our degree programs are huge, but it's not sufficient because one of the concerns US employers express is a greater concern about professionalism and communication. And Diana will talk about this later. When we're evaluating you and your application, it's not just your grades and your test scores that matter to us. It's really about how strongly we feel about our ability to place you in a top-notch role with one of our esteemed employers. And so like things like LinkedIn profile. If your LinkedIn profile does not look like an American LinkedIn profile, then that materially impacts your ability to be placed in this environment. And so one of the things we tell our people, make sure you look at the kind of people that you want to be like when you come to America and have your LinkedIn profile look like that, because that's a strong signal to the market about your ability to fit in, assimilate, and really be productive beyond the technical skills that you just developed. As I mentioned earlier, with Boston being a tech hub, a financial services, and a health and life sciences hub, we're really orienting our career efforts and our employer development to those three industries. So while we can help a student get anywhere, 80% of the opportunity that our students are going to see are going to come from these three industries. When we think about the STEM paths, the ones that are doing the best, data analytics and AI lead the way. These skills are valued, especially when they lead to enabling business decision making and transformation. And these paths are highly prevalent. We have an analytics path in our MBA, an analytics path in the finance program, of course, an analytics path in our Masters in Business Analytics program, an analytics path in our accounting program that is the most popular path. And so it's highly prevalent here at Data at Bentley. And so, while the costs of graduate education are expensive, one of the things that we see is people are trying to, people continue to question the value of higher education and that kind of thing. But, and these points came from the 2025 GMAC employer corporate recruiter survey. And one of the things that stood out was employers globally, and especially outside the US, believe graduate business degrees are more valuable than those with certificates or badges alone. And so sometimes I think what happens with folks is they look at, okay, I'll get the certificate and such, and they see the exceptional case where the individual may have gotten a certificate and moved up the ranks. But on average, at an aggregate level, the degrees are still the gold standard. And so we think Boston, Bentley, we're really well positioned for you guys to be really successful here. Now, this is Zaida Pimentel. She graduated from our MSBA program last year, and she's going to be graduating from our MBA program this year. And this quote just kind of really reinforces what employers have been saying, right? And so, you know, from predictive modeling to storytelling with numbers, this is what really differentiates our MSBA program, and is a common theme throughout all of our programs. And we feel like we have a really compelling offering for you all here, regardless of the program path you pick. Now, our goal is we prepare you in the classroom, right? And so, as vice president of strategy and innovation, I partner with the faculty and on the academic side, but then I also oversee the career side and the admissions process. So I'm responsible for sourcing the talent, and then I'm also responsible for preparing the talent after they get the academic fundamentals. And our career curriculum really focuses on career choice, like understanding what you really want to do, the story crafting. How do you articulate that narrative to the market? Like, what's your unique selling proposition? And then how we reflect that in your LinkedIn profile, your resume, and cover letter. So there's this kind of continuity in your messaging that really helps you stand out. A lot of times where MBA students or MS students fail is that I just want a good job, and that's not going to get you in the door. It's actually going to create more skepticism with the people that you engage with. And so you got to have a tight story in order to get the best opportunity. And one of the things that's happened more and more over the last 10 years is these AI and machine learning tools that, sit on the other side of the digital application submission really weed out a lot of people, and not particularly well. And so we're big advocates of the network-based job search. We have this framework that I've come up with called the Seed 10 Harvest Framework, where we teach students how to identify, you know, uh, people who can help them. Because our rule of thumb is don't ever apply for a job unless you know a human on the other side. So we want to help you identify those people who could be potential advocates. The 10 part is how do you manage the relationship, build advocacy and trust. And then the harvest part is how do you activate those relationships when the right role and opportunity comes up. One of the things we teach our students in the classroom and on the finance side is, efficient market theory. And we tell people you can't beat the market when it comes to stocks and investing unless you have information asymmetry. And we also think this holds true on the career side. You cannot beat the market unless you know more than someone else about what's going on in the market. And the network approach is how you get information that others don't get. And after we do the first three things, the career choice, where we help you identify the potential paths you could go down, the story crafting, and the networking. Then we help you on the fundamental things related to the preparation for interviews and then the negotiation, so we can get you the best opportunity available. And so, this is an example of that seed 10 harvest process. And, it's what we see is that, the solid blue line is kind of what we want to see the effort level be, right? But what we really see too many times where students aren't as successful is on the dotted blue line. And so when you should be seeding and meeting people the most, right? That's where you're kind of laying the foundation for the network-based approach. It helps you identify, where the opportunities are in industry, who are the people you should be reaching out to. Then you move to that tending phase, and that's just managing the relationship, building trust, etc. And then the harvesting phase is like, oh, I found this job at Apple. I know Diana, she works at Apple. Let me ask Diana about what's going on at Apple. So we have this philosophy here. We say there's a one-letter difference between networking and not working. And this is what we're really building towards here at the school from a cultural perspective. And so we want people to think about that whole seeding tending process framework over the time frame as like a funnel, right? Where you build your target list, you seed your connections, you tend to the connections, you harvest, and then we help you close, right? And this is what our approach to careers is built upon. Now, as I talked earlier, Boston is a fantastic market, but in this world, we recognize we want to prepare our students to also potentially capitalize on opportunities that are outside of the US, right? And so while there are structural shifts in US hiring, opportunities are abound globally that can potentially diversify your risk. And so with the work that I've been doing here, and we've hired people and who have worked abroad, or we are becoming more attuned to helping students figure out these opportunities, right? Why global? Of course, the U.S. is plan A, and I think it's such an incomparable labor market. If you can get in here, you should get in here. But global plan B is not a bad thing. And we think this is important because we fundamentally believe that opportunities have no borders. Different career paths or different growth, can, change you by capitalizing on a regional growth trend or something along that perspective. And international experience and personal brand can really help make you more compelling from a salary perspective over the longer term, right? And so this is why we think it's in your best interest to understand these principles, regardless of whether you stay in the US or not. Now, there are four markets where we have global connectivity. And so one of the things in strategy and innovation, I'm also, in addition to being responsible for kind of like the student and the commercial side of grad programs, I'm also responsible for executive and professional education, which like serves the corporate industry. And I'm also responsible for strategic and global outreach, right? And so because of that, we have connectivity to help students that can help students develop a plan for multiple markets, right? And so Asia Pacific, I've placed tons of students there. The Middle East, I was just in Saudi and Dubai last week. We're delivering a finance program to, one of the ministries of finance in the region. And then other areas, we know paths into Europe, Australia, and Canada, and then the other areas of the global south. Like today, we're running a program with the National Pension Regulatory Authority in Ghana. So we're very connected as an institution. And so we want to, in order for us to kind of maximize the return on investment at Bentley, we want to leverage all of our relationships, our structures and processes across the whole Bentley platform. All right. And so when we think about global career opportunities, there's so many elements that we have expertise on, the compensation versus cost of living, right? And so one of the things like, um, we were doing this exercise in one of our global sessions where we talked about, so what's a better job? Something that pays, $70,000 in Singapore or $90,000 in Hong Kong, right? You know, and what you'll find if you do the cost of living adjustments and the purchase power parity calculations, that $70,000 in Vietnam may be two and a half times better than the job that you might get in Hong Kong or Singapore. Other factors like work-life balances and social protections, like maybe like a Europe has better kind of benefits and social safety nets than say a Hong Kong, right? So we help you evaluate those things. We also have market expertise for you to think about your career trajectory and scope. The other piece, though, is hiring access and the path of citizenship, right? So, one of the things, I'll say, I've had a lot of students from sub-Saharan Africa and India who are like the most important thing is being able to get upgrade a passport, right? And so we help them think about what's the best path. So if you want to make the most money, the United States is always the best option. But if you're like, I really want to guarantee that I want to get a citizenship, the EU path might be more straightforward, right? And so we help you evaluate and balance those considerations. If you want to think about like, what's going to have more brand and signaling and for global mobility, we help you think about that. And then there's the, um, startups, like say in Asia, sometimes I think startups can be more lucrative than like local MNCs, right? Because what's happened, like say a Procter and Gamble in Malaysia has localized and been there for 40 years. So they don't really pay as much, right? But a startup that's, a technology startup in Kuala Lumpur that's trying to compete, because there's really no walls for a technological startup in Kuala Lumpur to compete, right? Is probably more close to a global salary level than a Procter and Gamble that's been in, Malaysia for 50 years. So we help you balance all those things here. So we've got great resources and experts. Um, Beyond, myself, our career team with Audra, John, they do the primary coaching. Rachel White leads our employer relations. So we reorganized our career efforts around really a dedicated focus to business development, employer relations that Rachel leads. And then David Yao, he's our kind of air traffic controller of careers, right? And so making sure we understand where every student is so we can figure out how to really help you in order to be successful. We also have a variety of platforms, LinkedIn Masterclass, Vault, VMOC, which is an AI resume enhancement tool. Career Leader is how we really figure out what your interest, motivation, and cultural fit is to help you kind of identify the companies and the industries that best fit you. And then InterStride is another job search tool. So lots of resources available for students to leverage. Recently, we've made an additional investment in Higher Grad, which is a 1220 platform, which is kind of the gold standard career CRM kind of platform that schools use with employers. And what this does is provide more access to different jobs for our students at the graduate level. And so we've just rolled this out last week. So we're really always transforming here at Bentley, and the career team has done a fantastic job on that. We have events like our Career Success Summit, typical career conversations with alumni. We have a graduate career fair. So lots of cool things going on at Bentley. And so now that I've kind of painted the picture of how we put you in a position for success and how we support you on the career side, I'm going to turn it over to Diana, and she's going to talk about how do you get here.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Sean, for all of that. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about our application process. Good news is Bentley's application process for these programs is relatively straightforward. You can see on the screen here what the application requirements are, and I'm going to kind of go through these things in a little bit more detail to give you some more specific feedback on them. So we do require a resume and strongly recommend submitting a LinkedIn profile as well. I think what Sean was saying earlier about the story crafting, as he was saying, this is really important even in the admission process. Now, once you get here, hopefully we're going to help you take this to the next level, but we still really want you to do your due diligence at this stage in the process. It shows us like your investment in coming here, and really understanding what it is that we're looking for to show that future career success. So looking up American style resumes, really spending some time on your resume, making sure that it is really reflecting all of the different things that you've done, and then tailoring the resume and the LinkedIn also to make sure that it's reflecting what you are hoping to do. Making sure that you are spending time highlighting the specific skills that are going to be of value in the particular programs that you're hoping to apply for. I definitely recommend keeping your resumes on the shorter side. Typical standard for many American resumes is 1 page. I recommend keeping it to 1 or 2 pages if you're able to, and be strategic about what you're putting on there.
Can I add something to that,
Yes.
Diana? And so I think the general rule of thumb for us is that one for every 5 years of work experience, 1 page on the resume. So for some of you who might be a little bit longer, if you got 8 years, we can live with 2 years, 2 pages, because it still will get on two sides of a physical paper, on one sheet of paper. But what I will add to this as well. We have seen people, because we also have the career office in the admissions process, and we have seen someone who had a good resume, a better resume and LinkedIn profile get 50% more on scholarship, right? And there's nothing in these other boxes that Diana will talk about where you'll see that kind of jump on just the kind of polish and delivery, right? And so I want you to just think about that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. No, that's a great clarification. It is extremely important because for many of our programs, we don't require an admission interview. For our full-time MBA programs, we do, but many of our other programs, it's only sort of optional as an admission officer might request. So that resume and LinkedIn profile is where you get to really tell us about yourself, and we get to see your professional polish. So next I'll talk about, we do ask for one letter of recommendation. Now, this recommendation letter can be an academic recommendation if you're a recent graduate and you have a professor who'd like to write that letter for you. It can also be a professional recommendation. If you have a good professional recommendation, we would generally might prefer to see that over an academic one. If you, for example, if you are a more recent graduate or you're currently in college, if a recommendation letter from a manager at an internship is a great one to consider, and you are able to submit more than one letter of recommendation if you'd like to. If you have been working for a little while, if you've been working full time, we definitely would like to see that professional rec letter, but we will accept either. I know Sean has said in the past, keep in mind that the recommendation letters are really designed for us to see how someone who is working with you closely views your skills and potential. It's not necessarily useful to have a recommendation letter from someone who might have a very high position at a company but hasn't worked as closely with you. So ideally, we really want to hear from someone who has experience working with you, has done projects with you, and seen what you're capable of and is ready to speak to that. The next component is our admission essay. So we do have a short admission essay, which is required. It's about 300 to 500 words, and there's some different prompts based on what you're applying for. They're all asking you your opinion about business topics. My strong recommendation for these essays is please do not use AI to write them. AI is like a really major component of, as Sean was talking about, it's really huge in the career world right now. It's something that you will be learning about in your classes. You will likely be utilizing in different capacities in your classes. But for your application essay, we really want to see your genuine thoughts and expression. Sometimes people ask, oh, can I just use it to polish up my language? To be honest, we'd rather not see that. And we're aware that many of our applicants, English may not be your first language, and that's perfectly fine. We're not a literature program. I'm looking to see that you are able to articulate your ideas and express those to us, and I really want to see your original thoughts on that without the usage of AI. So that would be something I'd like to see for your essays. Um, and then personal statement for us is optional. I do highly recommend writing one. So like I said, the essay is more of a business question. The personal statement is really your ability to tell us, why are you here? What has your journey been? Why are you applying to this particular graduate program? What are your goals to get out of this program? And what are your career goals in the long term? How is this program going to help get you there? So, like Sean was saying before, really crafting your story about like, why am I here? What is this program going to do for me? How is this going to help me? And how am I going to contribute to this community? This is a great place to really think that out for yourself and write that down. In fact, this might even be a good thing to do sort of first as you're considering what your story is if you haven't developed that before. Write this out so you know what it is, and then make sure you're adjusting the other components of your application to really reflect your goals and applying for this program aligned with your future goals for your career.
Can I add something to this too? I think there's six boxes there, and they're all pretty standard, right? And we're about two-thirds, almost halfway through the admission cycle. And this optional essay is a huge differentiator. It really allows us to understand who you are. And you'd be surprised at how the scholarship needle or the admissions needle can move based on this most distinct element of yourself. Like what we're told you is we want to see the resume profiles and the LinkedIn profiles like kind of look a certain way, right? But this statement right here is the one thing where you can do that's just you, right? And so
And it's also a good place, I'll add, if you feel that you have any particular weaknesses in your application for whatever reason, like we've all had different journeys through life, that happens. That's a great place to acknowledge that and sort of show how you've moved past that and how you intend to continue moving forward in your educational and career journey. So that's one last element I'll add to that personal statement. Um, I'll touch briefly on the GMAT and the GRE. So, for our MBA and MS programs, this is optional. It's something where if you are on the fence about whether or not you are intending to take this or submit your scores, I would recommend reaching out to us. We're happy to have a more in-depth conversation with you about whether that score might be valuable to your application, if it's worth you investing the time to study for those exams. But they are officially optional for our programs.
I will add this point though. Nothing can move the needle like this because, particularly for our international students, it is we're not familiar with everyone's school, and so it does bring an element of comparability to the process that could really help you, right? And so while we want to create an environment that is accessible, right? When it comes to scholarship and that kind of thing, it can be really advantageous, right? And so as Diana has pointed out, you don't need to make the call. You should talk to us and we can counsel you in the best direction on this.
Exactly. For some candidates, it might be really valuable for you to take it. So come and talk to us. We're very straightforward about this kind of thing. Our goal is to help you put together a great application. So we'll tell you if we think it would be helpful for you particularly. The next component is the English language test. So for some of our candidates, we will need an English language test exam score to show your proficiency in the language. We accept basically all of the major English language tests, including Duolingo. For many candidates, if you have attended an undergraduate or graduate level education, which was conducted entirely in English, we're able to waive this requirement. You do have to show us a letter from your institution showing that English was the only medium of instruction. So this is another one. If you have any hesitancy, please reach out to us and we can give you any more information about that. We can advise you. And the last thing that we need for the application is your transcript. Now, if you have attended any universities within the United States, we can accept an unofficial transcript. We can get the official one later on in the process. If you completed your graduate or undergraduate education outside of the United States, we will need something that's called an International Transcript Evaluation. So if you haven't heard of these, some of the big companies, WES is one that's very well known, and there's several others that we recommend as well. Essentially, you're paying a service that will convert your particular school's curriculum, grading, and all of that into an American scale. And then that is a firm requirement for candidates who have completed that higher education outside of the United States. So my big heads up with this is that it can take a little while to order. Please don't plan to apply for this the last minute, like right before the deadline, because sometimes getting the process of getting your transcripts to them and then getting them the evaluation to us, sometimes this can take like 4 to 6 weeks at most. I would say minimum, it usually takes around 2 weeks. So this is something to start looking into as soon as you start thinking about applying. And this is something that leads nicely into the next slide, since I'll talk a little bit about where we are at in the cycle this year and sort of what our timeline looks like. So, thank you, Sean. So, for this year, we are still accepting applications for fall 2026. The deadline for our international candidates is June 1st. Now, and I want to explain a little bit about who counts as an international candidate for this. This international deadline is for folks who will need a new F1 visa to study here in the United States. If you are already in the United States on a F1 visa and you would be doing a SEVIS transfer, is what we call that, transferring your F1 over to Bentley, you do not need to abide by this deadline. The reason we have this earlier deadline is so that we can get you all of the correct information and you can do your visa appointment and all of that. So, for any candidates who are in that situation and you'd like to apply, please reach out early. This is the last day we can get all of your application materials. Don't just submit everything that day and then say, oh, well, everything else is coming in several weeks. Plan ahead now. Please reach out to us. We're very happy to help talk you through a timeline. Make sure you can get all your materials into us by that deadline. It just helps us make sure that if we would like to admit you, that you're going to have enough time to be successful to get through the process, to get here in time for fall, because classes begin on August 31st. For folks who do not need that new F1 visa, then the deadline is later. I believe it is August 1st. So we do have more time for you to apply because you don't have to do an entire visa interview process. And I'll just quickly go through some future terms for any folks who are looking a little bit farther out. So we do admit for both fall and spring terms. So we are going to be in August, our applications for spring and fall 2027 will open. You can see on the 1st and the 15th. And then the same timeline will continue every year. So the following, so if you're looking to begin in 2028, those applications will open in August 2027. And I'll just briefly touch on some scholarship opportunities for folks to have a quick understanding of how that works for us. So the major types of scholarships that Bentley is able to offer for our graduate students are merit scholarships and graduate assistantship positions. So merit scholarships are awards that are based on your competitiveness within our application pool. And like Sean has been saying throughout this presentation, there's a lot of factors that go into this. It's not necessarily just the person with the from the best school with the highest GPA or something like that. There's a lot of factors that we take into consideration, including how employable we feel you will be after graduation. So that's why we're saying to please pay attention to all these different components of your application because they are all taken into factor when we make those merit scholarship decisions. Graduate assistant positions are another great opportunity for folks who are applying to fall start terms. These are essentially guaranteed positions on campus, like a job position, where you get 15 hours a week of work guaranteed. Students are able to work up to 20 hours a week on campus, and this guarantees you a position for the fall and the spring semester. I would say this is particularly valuable for international candidates who are going through the visa process because that award as a guaranteed scholarship would be show up on your I-20. So that is something to think about. They are very competitive. The good thing about both of these is that there's no special application. All you have to do is check a box on our application that you would like to be considered for one or both of these. And just a heads up for anyone thinking about applying for spring, there are still many opportunities for on-campus employment for our students other than the graduate assistantship. And sometimes the pay can be quite comparable. So don't let that dissuade you from applying to a spring position. And then one last note is that for any folks who are US citizens or permanent residents, you are eligible to apply for need-based aid as well, where you'd submit the FAFSA and the CSS profile to our Student Financial Services office, and they can see if you're eligible for any need-based aid awards. All right. Anything to add on this, Sean?
So one of the things I wanted to let our students know is also given the environment with international visas and such, our start points in the spring are something that are fairly distinct for a university of Bentley's caliber. And so, if we can't make some of the deadlines for fall, what we've been doing is taking a lot of students in spring and helping them position their application better, for a spring term than they may have been able to for a fall term. So something to think about as well, right? If for other schools, most of the time, if you don't get into the fall or something happens on the visa side, you have to wait to the next fall. With Bentley, we can get you in the spring. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point. And I know there's like a lot of stress, across the world right now about some of the changes in the visa process. Our goal is to work as closely as we can with all of our admitted students to do our best to support you. And like Sean was saying, if it doesn't work out for one term, we can move to the next. So we're sort of here for you every step of the way to do whatever we can to support you. We're a very small team here in graduate admission. And our goal is to work very closely with you to do everything we can to help. All right. I think that's all I had for this, Sean.
so I'm going to ask you a question, Diana. Why did you choose? I forgot to mention that Diana is a HFID student in our HIFD master's program. And so, what made you want to choose that program, Diana?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'll give a little background on myself. Both my undergraduate and my previous master's degrees, I was studying English literature. That's really been my passion. I love it. It definitely helps when I'm reading applications. I love seeing students' essays and how they talk about what their goals are.
And
Um,
that's why she's the hardest on you on the AI
yes.
and the writing, you
Later
guys.
in your
So
classes, just not in your essay, please. Um, but I would say when I actually started working here in graduate admission, I was speaking to one of our other admission counselors who is he was in that program. He's now graduated from that program, and he was telling me about it. And to be honest, a big thing for me was thinking about that I had the opportunity to sort of differentiate my resume in the future because I know for many folks, they might look at it and see, okay, this girl's done literature 2 times in a row. No, I've had some great work experience. I've been lucky enough to work at Bentley for, I think it's about 6 years now. But I was really thinking that, okay, having something that's more quantitative on my resume is something that's going to make me look a little bit more flexible in the future. I I I was also interested in potentially exploring like working in the field of UX or working in higher ed and helping design different things. So I had really been thinking from that perspective of like, oh, this is going to teach me a lot about things I haven't done before, and it's going to help me look more broad in the like in the job market in the future. And that's also really how I would encourage all of you to think about like, how is this degree going to help me be flexible in the future? How is it going to make other people look at me differently? And I've been really thrilled with the program. The professors are amazing. I've had the opportunity to work with students who are literally, I have classmates from all over the world, which I think is incredible. Even in one class alone, I had classmates from Ghana, India, Pakistan, Vietnam, China. So it was an amazing opportunity to work closely in small groups, get a lot of project-based learning with people and come up with solutions together. And in one class that I was working with Professor Janelle Estes, who's actually the faculty director for the HFID program, we presented, one of our teams actually presented a project proposal directly to executives from the Boston Celtics, which I just think is such a unique opportunity for our students to like get that experience of working with real companies. And then that's something my classmates can talk about in future interviews, put on their resumes. So I've been enjoying my experience in the program so far, Sean.
And the HIFD program is kind of the one of the best embodiments of what Bentley is about because it's really about that interface between humans and machines. And in this era of AI, we feel like graduates from this program are really positioned to make an impact in the workforce post graduation. And as someone who is on my team, I'm looking forward to leveraging these skills that Diana has for us. So yeah.
Well, I'll just finish up here. So just wanted to share some different links with you to connect with us, learn more about us. So CISS is our Center for International Student Services. So they've got a great website. Absolutely check them out. If you would like to just reach out to us, our email is all over everything. I'm sure you got confirmation emails. And just a heads up, any automated email you get from Bentley is from our graduate admission recruiting is applygrad@bentley.edu. You can reply to any of those automated emails and they go right to myself and our team, so we can reach out and respond to you very quickly. If you'd like to set up a time to chat with one of the members of our graduate admission office, you can use this set up a consultation code in the middle and it'll show our schedule. We have opportunities basically every single day, and you're welcome to follow us on social media as well.
Well, thank you all for your time. Great job, Diana. I caught you on the spot as a student ambassador as well.
My pleasure.
Um, but we're really excited about you all potentially considering Bentley. We're on a growth and transformation agenda here at the institution with our 2030 strategic plan. And we think graduate students are absolutely central to the direction that we want to pursue in the future. And we hope you join us.
Amazing. All right, fantastic. Thank you, everyone. We have just a couple minutes left. If anyone did want to throw a question into the Q&A, we'd be more than happy to answer it for you. I see we've got a few folks here, so we'll pause for a moment here if anyone would like to ask myself or Sean any questions. I'm also going to put our email right into the chat here.
If you connect with me on LinkedIn, I will respond. So.
Yes. Sean's always traveling and doing amazing things for our office, so he might respond at strange hours, but he will respond. All right, folks, I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A. If I'm cutting you off too quickly, I apologize. Please feel free to email us and we'll be happy to answer your questions that way. But it was lovely getting to meet all of you today. Thank you so much for listening, and we're really looking forward to hopefully having a conversation with you. We'd love to know more about, like, even if you're early in the process, that's totally okay. Don't feel like you have to show up totally polished for a first meeting. We're happy to like tell you more about this process and guide you through this journey. So we're looking forward to connecting with you and hopefully seeing you on campus someday. All right. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.